All right, good morning everybody. We are going to pick up right where we left off yesterday. So if you look at the fourth page of these first notes, some of you guys were asking me about these. I intended to split it up into 2 days to not give you too much for the first part. So far I'm getting some good feedback. Please continue to share that feedback with me. Send me emails when you have questions. Let me know how it's going. You guys were awesome on day one. Almost everybody got it and took attendance. Thank you so much, and I hope you're keeping up with these notes. Please just continue to email me and ask questions whenever those come up. All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. So notice how this section we have special case trinomials. We talked a little bit about some of our special cases yesterday, but let's see what else we notice here. All right, so if we start with 23, I see that a equals 1. And I see that I have 3 terms. So I'm going to go straight to my favorite, big X. Up on top, 1 times 1 is 1, and on the bottom, b is -2. So I need 2 numbers that add up to -2 and multiply to -1. So if that's not jumping out to you right away, there's only a couple things that can multiply to 1. And since that's -2, it's got to be -1 and -1. So when we go now to write our binomials, we know that b squared's got to be b times b, and we know that each of these have to be -1. Alright, so why is this called a special case, or why is this in the special case? If we look at it, we have b minus 1 times b minus 1, and we can rewrite this as b minus 1 squared, and that's why it's a special case, because this is a binomial squared pattern. So if we look back at it, you can see b minus 1, -1 plus -1, or -1 times 2 is boom, right there, -2, and -1 squared is +1, boom, there's a special case. Alright, our other special case that we want to talk about today, we already talked about yesterday, and hopefully you guys are feeling a little more comfortable with seeing this, and that's when we have 2 terms, and we have subtraction. This is our difference of squares pattern. Remember, if you don't see this, you can continue to use the same strategy, but when we have a nice big coefficient like 16, we're probably not going to want to use that big X. We want to look for this pattern. So if you guys think about what this really means, 16x squared is the same as 4x, and I'm going to put parentheses around this because remember that means I got to square the 4 to get the 16. I got to square the x to get the x squared. And then we have 1 squared. So when we see this pattern of 2 perfect squares with that subtraction between them, our difference of squares pattern simply says take the square root of the first thing, or in this case 4x, and add the square root of the second thing, which is 1. And we have the same then binomial, but 1 plus and 1 minus. And by having these alternating signs, that's what cancels out our middle term. So 4x times 4x gives us 16x squared. 4x times -1, -4x. 1 times 4x is +4x. When we add those, we get 0x, which is why there's no middle term here. And then 1 times -1 gets us the -1. Alright, I'm going to leave 24 and 26 for you guys, and we're going to keep rolling, and now we get into some new material. Thank you, those of you guys that asked me some questions about the sum and difference of cubes. I'm excited to see that you want to know something new. And let's talk about this pattern, because this kind of flows from our difference of squares pattern in that we have to figure out how to cancel things out, right? That was the key, was canceling those things out. When we see sum and difference of cubes now, we only have an x cubed term and we have a constant cubed term. So we're going to write this a couple ways. I'm going to write this right up here because we have all this nice space. So here's what our pattern says, and we'll analyze this in a second. I just want to get it up here so you guys can kind of look at it. We have x squared, and actually since we have a and b here, let's go ahead and call these a and b, just so you guys know why that a and b is there. Alright, so let's say we have a squared, or a cubed, excuse me, plus b cubed. This is clearly a sum of cubes because we have a plus and 2 things cubed. Alright, when we factor that, let's start analyzing this pattern as we go. I'm going to tell you guys what it is, but I want you to start analyzing and see what you notice in terms of signs. Alright, so the first binomial that I'm going to separate out or factor out is just simply going to be a plus b. So it's the first part plus the second part, or the cube root of each of those. Alright, so we take that and we have a binomial. Now again, think about what you notice about the signs as I do this. Alright, so there we have a plus b. Now we're going to factor that, since we pulled out one of each of those, we're going to be left with a trinomial with each of those terms squared. And here's what it's going to look like. So it's going to start with a squared, and this makes sense, right? A times a squared gets me that a cubed that I started with. Okay, but now I'm going to have a minus here, and it's going to be minus a times b, and then a plus here, and then we're going to have the b squared. Alright, so check this out. If we go back and double check, a times a squared gives us that a cubed. A times negative ab gives me negative a squared times b. A times b squared gives me positive a times b squared. Okay, now if I do my second term, b times a squared gives me the positive, and remember that's what I got here was the negative version of that. Okay, b times negative ab squared gives me negative ab squared, and b times b squared gives me that b cubed. So we see these middle terms end up canceling out. So here's the pattern I want you guys to see, is that this sign, boom, and this sign are always going to be the same. So both of those start with a plus. Our original is a plus, so sum of cubes, our binomial is a plus. Then if we look at it, these two, boom, boom, these are always going to be different. One plus, one minus. And then this little guy right here is always positive. Always a plus. Alright, so now if you think about this pattern, we can write the difference of cubes pattern now. So difference of cubes, there's sum of cubes with a plus, difference of cubes looks like this. A cubed minus b cubed equals, start with our same pattern. Remember, same minus sign, a minus b. Same. Now we do our trinomial. Start with a squared, still the same as above, but now these signs are going to be opposite. So I start with a minus, so that makes this a plus. Still ab, always a positive, b squared. Sum of cubes, difference of cubes. Notice how the signs, again, same sign, different signs. Same sign, different signs. So that's the pattern, and we're going to use that, and you guys are going to practice. This is really just going to be about you guys practicing and making sure this is making sense to you. Okay? So I got two sums here and two differences here. I still want you guys to do two of these. So since I had a request for number 29, I'm going to do 29 for you guys, and I'm going to do 30 for you guys, and I'll let you then do 27 and 28. Alright, so let's take a look at 29 and 30, and let's match these up with our patterns. Alright, so the first thing is you have to make sure you can see that cube there. So if you have that powers chart handy from our previous units, it might be helpful to look at the powers chart. Otherwise you can start writing out the cubes that you remember. I remember that 125 is 5 cubed, and that's really important to see that right away. So as we look for each of those pieces, right, 125 is 5 cubed, x cubed obviously is x cubed. Now as you guys write that pattern, remember that it starts off with a binomial, and it's going to be 5, signs that are the same, plus x. Okay, then we do a trinomial, and it's going to be now our first term squared, so 5 squared. And now this is where I use the opposite sign. So it was a plus first, stayed the same. Now it's opposite. and it's going to be a times b, or in this case 5 times x, so minus 5x. And then our last sign is always a positive, and that's going to be times our second term squared. So again, look at what we have here, guys. Same signs, opposite signs, always positive. So I wrote that 5 squared just to help you guys see that again. If you want to jump right to 25, if you're feeling comfortable with that, you can write it just like this. And that's our answer. That's the beautiful thing about this pattern. Once you see those cubes, it's not a ton of work. There's not that much to think about, but we have to know our cubes in order to do this. Alright, so now let's do a difference of cubes. So again, might help you guys to rewrite it. X cubed. 27 I remember is 3 cubed. Again, if you don't remember, start writing those cubes out. Write them out on the side of your paper. Start quizzing yourselves. Get out that power chart. Alright, and I have x cubed minus 3 cubed. So as I factor this again, I'm going to start with my binomial. X minus 3. Remember, same sign here. Then when I go to my trinomial, it's going to be x squared. So my first thing squared. Now we have opposite signs or different signs. So it was a minus, that's a plus here. And then we're going to have my first thing times my second thing, which is going to be 3x. And then we're going to have always positive, which is now going to be 3 squared. And again, you can go straight to 9 if you want. I just want to make sure you guys are seeing where that 9 comes from. So same signs, opposite signs, always positive. X squared plus 3x plus 9. There's our difference of cubes pattern. Alright, so if you want to do this now, go ahead and pause. You guys can do 27 and 28. The solutions were posted for all 4 of these pages today or yesterday, whenever you're looking at this, so you can check those solutions as you go and email me with any questions that you have. Alright, let's continue on. Alright, notice now, they look the same. What I see that's different, still have a cube, but I have a coefficient with that x cubed now. Coefficient with that x cubed. Coefficient. Okay, no coefficient, so that's just like what we just did. But the coefficient just adds one little detail that we want to focus on. Alright, so here's what I like to do, and I think this is again important that you rewrite it with your cubes. So 125 is 5 cubed. 64 is going to be 4 cubed. But I'm going to write it like this because it's not just 4 cubed, it's 4x cubed. So as I look at that, if we think of our original pattern, I can call that my A, that my B, okay? And now we'll follow that same pattern, all right? I'm going to write each of these steps out so you guys can help see it a little more clearly. In this order, first one, sign stays the same, so it's 5 minus 4x. And then when we do our trinomial, it's the first one squared, so it's 5 squared. Now I switch to my opposite sign, so it's going to be a plus here. And now it's 5 times 4x. And I'm going to write that down so you guys, again, see that step in there. If you're comfortable with that, go ahead and do that step in your head. That's fine. And then always a plus. And then we take that second term, 4x, and we're going to square that. So be careful here because a lot of people just will square the x and forget to square the 4. So that's why I want to write those steps in there for you guys. Alright, that's your half again, so I'm going to separate those out so we don't get into your space. Alright, so now as we write our final answer, I'm just going to simplify or clean this up a little bit. And again, you guys might have done that in your heads. 5 squared is 25, plus 5 times 4x gives me 20x, and 4x squared. Don't forget to square that 4. 16x squared. Alright. Now again, it's always nice to do a quick little double check and make sure everything cancels out like it should. So when I do 5 times 25, there's my 125 I started with. 5 times 20x is 100x. 5 times 16, x squared. Let's see, that's going to be 80x squared. And then when we go back and do this now, watch each of those cancel out. Negative 4x times 25. There's my negative 100x to cancel out the 100x. negative 4 times positive 20x. There's my negative 80x that canceled out that 80x squared, and negative 4x times 16x squared gives us back to that negative 64x cubed. Okay, there's our pattern, and again, distributing it back is going to show us how those cancel. All right, so if you want to pause, you can go on to number 32, or you can keep working with me and then do those two separately. All right, number 33. Let's go ahead with this. I'm going to rewrite again. I remember 64 is 4 cubed, so I'm going to write this as 4x quantity cubed. And I remember that 27 is 3 cubed. So again, as I use my pattern, first one, sign stays the same, so it's 4x minus 3. Now go to our trinomial. It's going to be 4x, and careful here, remember you got to square this, so I put that in another set of parentheses to remind myself. Now my sign switch, so this is a plus, and then it's going to be 4x times 3. If you want to put that 3 first, go ahead, that might help you remember, multiply the 4 and the 3, and then it's going to be my second term. Oh, whoops, I put squared here. Let's change that to a cubed. Sorry about that, guys. And then that's going to be a 3 squared. Alright, take a second, make sure that makes sense to you. I'm going to write my final answer with those multiplied out. 4x squared is going to give me 16x squared. 4x times 3 gives me 12x, and 3 squared gives me 9. And there we go, is our difference of cubes pattern again with that coefficient of x. Alright, check it out, guys. I know you were hoping for this extra credit opportunity. Let's put something in the extra credit bank. Alright, this is all you. Think about how this connects back to what we've done previously. Okay, when we had a quartic, how we can use our quadratic strategies to go ahead and factor this, and I'll give you a hint on this one. When you guys use that big X, or you use guess and check, we're going to use the same strategies. To get m to the 4th, we have m squared times m squared. And that's all I'm going to help you out with on that one. That's going to help you with 36 too. Alright, 37, same idea. You're going to need to do your big X, split this middle term the same way. Oh, but I'm also noticing, can you factor out a GCF here? That's probably going to help you a lot on that one. And then here, I definitely see that we have a GCF we can factor out here. And get aggressive, because there's a bunch of things we can factor out in that one. Alright, so there's your extra credit opportunity. If you guys would like to put those in the extra credit bank, what I would like you to do is work this out. You guys have this handout, take a picture. And email it to me. Okay, but I need to see work. And this will go in the extra credit bank for those of you guys looking to make some deposits. If you're asking me how to get that grade up, there we go. That's your chance. Alright, you guys should be checking homework, or should have checked homework from the previous ones already. Keep emailing me. Let me know what questions you have. Alright, talk to you soon.